What is truth, and how do we find truth in a world of deception? Are there biblical truths about our world and our lives that we can trust? And who are the key players in the end times? What does the Bible say about the Middle East, Iran, China, and Russia? And is there proof for what Scripture says? What do recent archaeological exploration tell us about the Bible? Who were the Annunaki? What are angels, demons, and the Nephilims? Will the Nephilims return? Are there interdimensional beings, and how do they relate to the Bible? Stick around as we dive into Scripture for more answers in this episode of Mission Truth.
We're still moving on to our conversation of truth. On our last episode, we kind of got into it a little bit when we were going to be talking about the flood.
Yeah.
And what happened before the flood. So we don't really have a statement that we're getting into in this particular episode because we're zeroing in more on what happened in Genesis. Again, before
the flood.
Yeah, before the flood, pre-flood. And what we've said before, we believe the Bible is is truth, and that's where we get our truth from. But when we talk about history and we talk about before the flood, that's actually always up for conjecture.
Yeah.
Because there's evidences for many, many things that could have happened. And we kind of want to give what we think is the correct side of the story. So when we get into Genesis, and before we get to the flood, we kind of get to that question of why did the flood happen?
Yep.
So we have to start at the beginning. Obviously.
Yeah.
That really sounded better in my head. But
yeah. The beginning.
So we start at the beginning. And one of the things I want to focus on, if you know anything about the story of Genesis and how it actually started, you had God created the earth in 6 days and rested on the seventh, and he created man and woman on the sixth day. And on that note, so it's kind of one of those things, when did time begin?
Yeah.
So we know that time began when he created the world as far as our perspective from a biblical standing perspective. Now, when sin entered the world, I think that's when things started to age. Yeah. I don't think anything aged before sin entered the world. And the reason I bring that up is because that's kind of paramount to our story when we go into why the flood happened or why the earth was destroyed. Again, we kind of went into some of the other conversations about evolutionists or other people have on the why or how the earth was destroyed. So we're getting into, our viewpoint of how the world, how this all came about. So in the garden, it talks about, and if you know the story, a snake came to Eve.
Nahash.
Well, we're gonna get in that word, Nakash or whatever.
Yeah.
But it is interpreted as a snake came and talked to Eve.
Yep.
And when I was a kid, a lot of the people that I talked to, that's what we were told. It was a snake. And that a snake was taken over by Satan or Lucifer, or whatever his name actually is. That's what he's called in the Bible. But I don't believe that's what his name actually is. And he is the one that deceived Eve because he told Eve, hey, I know God said you can do anything, but you can't eat of this one fruit, which is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And he said, you can eat of any tree in the garden, but you can't eat of this tree. But the snake said to Eve, there's nothing wrong with it. You can eat it. It's just God doesn't want you to know evil and good like him. It's going to make you like him. And so she ate the fruit, and she gave it to Adam, and Adam ate the fruit as well. And I'm not going to get too deep in the story, but I'm going to get it into, because of that, Adam and Eve were banished from the Garden of Eden, and the serpent or the snake was punished because it said you're going to be on the belly for the rest of your days. And it also says,
eat of the dust of the earth.
Eat of the dust of the earth. And it also says that the seed of the woman will always be against you. You will bruise his heel, but he will crush your head. Now, the whole reason I tell that story is because there was Satan was the leader of the rebellion in heaven. And a third of the angels came, or I guess were fallen away or said they were separated. We're not going to get too deep into that discussion.
Yep.
And the fact that Eve was talking to a snake, of course, when I was little, I don't know what they told you in school, but when I was little, they were like, well, everything communicated. That's why she was talking to a snake, and she didn't have any problem talking to a snake. But I want to get into the actual Hebrew word that is used in Genesis. And the Hebrew word is nakash. And the general interpretation of that is snake or serpent.
Yeah. Or fiery serpent, I believe, is
or
also,
fiery serpent. But it also carries connotations of cunning, divination, and shining or gleaming.
Yeah.
Now, we are pretty sure that Lucifer or Satan was a seraphim. There's different types of angels.
Yeah.
And seraphim are also pictured as having serpent-like features.
In fact, you see, that's where, like, within Egyptian motifs, you see these men with serpent heads. Mm-hmm. That sort of is a kind of a remnant of what Jews would have sort of, or I should say that kind of comes from the same place as the idea of the seraphim or the serpent, or at least we believe it does. And so that's kind of like the imagery that you're seeing with the seraphim is what they would have somewhat seen these seraphim as,
right?
In some ways,
right. So if you take that into account, a serpent. So Eve was used to talking to God because God came down and visited him with him in the garden. And so if you look at it in that kind of translation, it doesn't necessarily mean serpent. It means bronze-like one or one of holiness. And if you look at the definition of a seraphim, they're the ones surrounding God's throne, and they're bright. And Lucifer's name was, my mind went like
the morning star.
The morning
Lucifer
star
means morning star.
Lucifer means morning star.
Or son of the morning.
And he was a very high-ranking angel. So using that as a starter to where we're going toward.
Yep.
If Lucifer, part of these, the leader of the angels that have fallen away, and he's tempting man, and he basically starts this war.
Mm-hmm.
Because he causes Eve and Adam to sin through temptation. Yep. He's cursed. We don't know exactly what that, he's referred to as a dragon. So maybe who knows what form he still is today, because he's an eternal being. He's a spiritual being. Yeah. And that starts the battle right there.
Which we call what?
Which we call the battle?
The seed war.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Sorry, I put that in there.
It threw me.
But that's what some people call it, is the seed war. We're going back to Genesis, where it says, he shall bruise his head, and you will bruise his heel.
Yeah,
He's
he
speaking
will crush
of
your head, and he will bruise your heel. Yes.
And so that's kind of like the battle that we're talking about.
Yes.
And we see it move throughout the Bible, and we'll talk about that over time, I'm sure.
So we move a little bit further ahead, and the reason we have to bring up the seed war.
Yeah.
And you tell me, Nick, why do we need to bring up the seed war? Do you have?
Well, I mean, so you can go a couple of different directions with it. You can take a modern version and really talk about like DNA but effectively it's just Satan's attempt to cut off the line of the Messiah over time. Is that kind of where you would have gone with it? Maybe gotten a little bit more.
So it gets a little bit more complicated, in my opinion, than that. That's one of the lines as far as the seed war goes. But many people discount the Book of Enoch.
Yeah.
And, you and I have
Which we won't.
Yeah. We have talked about this before. And I firmly believe that the Bible states that toward the end, these things will be revealed. Mm-hmm. And I honestly think it's talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found, and where they were found. Of course, it was an arid climate. These things have survived for thousands of years.
In Qumran.
And if you look at the Book of Enoch, there's 4 or 5 volumes. They're different books.
Yeah, there's 2 books of Enoch, but the second one is not I don't know if the second one was found in Qumran.
It was
the
not.
first one was.
The third one was. Sorry, we JC.
Oh, okay. Our researcher. Yes.
Our researcher, our ever-present JC.
Yeah.
Is the one that gave us that information. Okay. So I honestly believe, though, that with the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of the Watchers was found with the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I've read the Book of the Watchers several times. And that leads to another discussion, because in the Book of the Watchers, there were 200. Yeah. 200 angels, and they were actually assigned to watch the earth.
Yep.
And if we go into Genesis, and this is where we talk about the seed wars, it talks about where they saw the daughters of men, and
which we're going to get into in our next episode.
We're going to get into that, and they came down and
did what they did.
So
it's also important, I think, to point out that because it's important to kind of link Enoch to the Bible. And what is it? Jude, and what's the other book? Is it Peter? Second Peter?
I thought it was one of. Does Paul quote him directly?
I want to say it's first, or is it one of the Peters and Jude? That Jude directly quotes the book, Book of the Watchers. The Book of the Watchers.
Yes.
So at the very minimum, the disciples of Christ knew the book and held it in reasonably high regard. So we're not saying that the book is scriptural in the same way that our normal canon is, but we're just saying that it's an important book to understand what those people during that time would have been thinking about the history of the world. And that maybe there's some truth we could glean from that, I think is kind of the point.
Yeah, you don't want to discount it because they believed in the writing of that book, and they actually, and I actually saw one fellow in particular. He was churched out. He was burned out by church, and what led him back to the Lord was actually reading the Book of the Watchers.
The Book of the Watchers,
because there are some prophetic sayings in the Book of the Watchers. So I'm trying to lay the groundwork here of what we're about to dive into, and that's why we're calling this a conversation, because we don't actually have a phrase to say, is this true or not?
Yeah.
Because again, we're talking about creation, and I know people use this word all the time. They call it the creation myth. In reality, our recorded history goes back about 5,000 years, roughly.
About 4,500.
Yeah.
I guess is about really where the beginning of it is. That's when Samaria is somewhere around 4,500 years ago.
And of course, in the Sumerians, and before they found the Sumerian, which we discussed in another episode, before they found the Sumerian tablets and all that, they didn't have anything past the Hittites, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, we're looking at what a ancient text that has been preserved by a people group that is recorded throughout history, which is the Israelites.
Yep.
Or the children of Israel. As far as I know, outside of the Persians, they are the oldest known people group
that's still
around today.
Yeah.
I think it's the Persians and maybe the Chinese.
Well, some would argue the Chinese, I guess. They have their own records would theoretically go back that far. Yeah. I mean, obviously we don't have anything in the Bible about them.
Yeah, exactly.
But they would be probably the one people group that might give the Israelites a run, or Israel a run for their money in terms of length of continual civilization. Even though, I mean, the Jews have been scattered multiple times, but they're still a people group though.
Yeah, they're still a people group. So taking that into account, there are evidences that prove so many things in the Bible correct
Yeah.
There has been nothing that I have found that it can be proven incorrect, especially when you're looking at proper translations of it. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep in mind that the Bible has a different reason for being than like a scientific textbook. So, because you'll get a lot of pushback on that from scientists that, I mean, first of all, the fact that we don't even know if the scientific theories about the origin of the universe are correct. Mm-hmm. We're making certain assumptions, but we also have to understand that it's not necessarily meant to be taken. Now, I have a different opinion on whether it is or not, but the point being is the point of Genesis is not to tell you scientifically what happened at the beginning. It's
correct.
to tell you the reason things happened. And
exactly. It gives us an idea of how things started and how things are going.
Yep.
Right. And that's kind of where we're at when it comes to Genesis. So I've laid the groundwork here for the beginnings of a seed war. And we're going to kind of close up this episode with that, because I don't want to get into any more of the details.
Yeah.
Because in our next episode, we're really going to dig into the seed war, where it started, why it started, and is it still going on today?
Yeah.
And
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we really need to kind of go over about the seed war, but I think where we'll start next is probably going to be
because
a good starting point.
It really gives a better explanation as to what happened, why it happened, why the Bible says these certain things. But the
important thing to take away from this is that there is going to be a constant battle that is trying to either corrupt or remove the seed that will ultimately produce the Messiah, which is Jesus Christ. And we miss that sometimes especially as Protestants, sometimes we miss that within the message that we learn over time. We forget that there's something much deeper going on, and that all these events from Genesis all the way up through the New Testament are not independent stories. They're all linked together.
Yes.
And they're all this battle that Satan and forces of darkness, however you want to term them.
Well, we as believing Christians know that God's in control. Yep. And one thing that's often overlooked with the story of Adam and Eve is Cain and Abel. Mm-hmm. And I just want to briefly touch that. Cain was a farmer and Abel was a shepherd.
Yep.
And Cain's name, names have meanings. And that's kind of something that I kind of touched on here when we're talking about Lucifer, the devil. We don't know his name because, from what I understand, if you know the name of the demon or you know the name of the angel, you have power over that being. So we don't know.
Yeah, he's not given that name.
No, we're not.
It was a
descriptor. It was a descriptor
of who.
And
a lot of times we get that mixed up sometimes in the Bible.
So with Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve thought they were going back in the garden. That's why they trained Cain to be the gardener, because they were going to garden in the garden. Mm-hmm. But they were not aware of God's timing because of what had happened. It wasn't the right time, and they didn't understand that. And we're just now fully kind of understanding those significant, I guess you could say, points in history that happened and how things have unfolded.
God's time ended up being a lot longer than than man's time.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to, they had their own timetable like we have our own timetable, but God has his own timetable, and he's the one in control.
Yep.
So we're going to end right there with this conversation of truth, and when we get into our next episode, this is kind of going to lead us into the question that we're going to ask, and we'll ask that on the next episode.
Yeah.
So
the explosive episode of Mission Truth.
Along with our partner in crime here, Nick, I'm Trevor, and as we close each episode, we like to say, keep
like and subscribe.
Correct.
To Agape TV and to Mission Truth.
Yes.
And all our other great partners, Rebels Redeemed and Jesus Life, and, a lot of others
that'll be added that we don't know of yet.
Yeah.
So as we always end our show, keep seeking the truth, and the truth will set you free. And we'll see you next time.